Hello everyone, welcome to the Red Room. Today we will do another review from games we loved but nobody else plays. So today we'll be reviewing Noctum and Miguel will kick it off.
So Noctum has already had two editions. The first one was published by Mongoose. The second, which is the one we'll be talking about today, was published by the author, which is Misha Thomas, the author's own imprint, Wicked World Games. The second edition is now available on, well, now for a long time, has been available on drive-through, on print on demand and PDF. The first edition is probably still, you can still find it somewhere. It still exists, only in print edition. So one of the advantages of this game compared to other horror games is that you have a free version, an alpha build, which is called Mutilated Edition, and you can download it for free and try, and it's a very big free edition. It has the rules, or most of the rules, and some of the setting, so you don't even need to buy the, well, perhaps you don't even need to buy, if you don't really like it, you don't even need to buy the game. You can use the free edition, but you should buy it. And there's a source book for it called Vivisection, which is composed mostly by plot hooks and some more information, some additional information about the setting. But the game has not that much setting. It's a contemporary horror game, so it's basically creatures and organizations and something like that.
I'm going to try to show the book with the blur. It's hard, but it's a really nice hardcover, and probably maybe it's better you share the screen so people can see how nice it
Well,
is.
for now it's behind me, so you can see.
Yes.
It's a simple cover, but it's a beautiful cover. By the way, I'm going to mention the first edition by Mongoose. It gave rise to a small controversy. Small because this was 10 years ago, maybe. The cover was, well, that was quite ugly, not like this one. It had a serial killer and a dead child, I think. And there was a fiction inside about a serial killer who killed children, who was also a pedophile. So this was the kind of thing that probably would have a much more bigger dimension right now. It probably would give rise to a Twitter storm, and the guy would have been cancelled and never work again. Fortunately for him, at the time that wouldn't happen, and he left role-playing games, I think, to work on video games. So he has a career, which is good because he is a talented guy.
And meanwhile, he has a second game, and he also worked for Modifius, right?
Yes, it was after Noctum. He published the game through Modifius, which is called Cold and Dark. Slightly more known than Noctum, I mean, but not that much. Yeah, there are some connections. He's Swedish, and he played Cult and Mutant Chronicles, so Noctum has some similarities to Cult. Especially the fact that it's not politically correct and that it is a mature horror game, unlike most other.
Mature game for mature players.
So the Mongoose edition had some problems, but then it was published, and this one is much better. The rules are also much better. The other one uses different rules. So the rules for Noctum are also the same rules, or almost the same rules for Cold and Dark. So if you Cold and Dark is horror in space, to play something like Alien or Outland. If you have the two, you can basically use the same rules and even mix the ones that are different. They are adaptable from one game to another. Now let's talk a little bit about the cover and the layout. So the cover is very simple, as I said, and you can see it behind me, but also atmospheric, and well, you can see the harshness and the fact that it's centered on real things, not necessarily monsters. Monsters aren't the best thing about Noctum. And the layout is also very adequately done. as I was mentioning before, Misha Thomas, the author, after this worked a little bit for Modiphius. He was involved in Mutant Chronicles, which we talked about in the last review, and also Conan and maybe other Modiphius game, I'm not sure. And he wrote some text, but he also was responsible for the art direction for the games. So
And he did the layout himself, right, for his games,
in
at least for
Noctum,
Noctum.
in Noctum, he did layout himself. I'm not sure about Golden Dark, but probably he did it also. And you can understand why he was hired by Modiphius, because he's talented also as a graphic designer. Now let's talk about the rules. And for that, I will share my screen. So this is the inside of the book. You can see it has the same feel. You can see the barbed wire, and I'm not sure what's on the other side, but it's, well, it's a representative of harshness in this game. There are no colors. It's a black and white book. So basic rules for this. You have attributes which are called aptitudes in this game, and skills. You use 8-sided dice, a pool of 8-sided dice. When you have to make a roll, you add your aptitude with your skill, you roll a number of dice equal to the sum of them, and each dice that you have higher than 7 is a target game, number, it's a success. And depending on the number of successes, you are able to do what you're trying to, or you aren't. And there are also aptitude rolls.
And you just roll the aptitude twice,
Yeah,
right?
that's it. So there are obviously the rules are simple, but not just this. There are other things. I was still looking for a character sheet so I could show. Well, it's nice. The character sheet, there's a rough look too. This is
This
of
is an
page.
example how simple, how a simple layout can also be effective and nice.
So you
I
have here
think
the aptitudes: attention, brains, brawn, cloud, cool, gut feeling, quickness, and reaction. There are some things that you might think they are repetitive: gut feeling and cool and cloud. They sometimes get a bit repetitive, but well, you get when you start playing, you'll understand what is each one means. There are some secondary attributes or aptitudes. You can see them on the right side: fate, essence, defense, and movement. Then the abilities or skills, a small list, not an extensive one like Call of
like
Cthulhu
cult.
and Cult. Yes. So this is one. So it's not very extensive. Then you have health. There are two kinds of health: bashing and fatal. It's something that is usual in World of Darkness games, for example. Then you have mentality. It's something like health, but applied to your mental health. There are several degrees of states of mind. It begins at peaceful and it ends at tormented. Then you have a table called fight or flight. This is a rule about also about the condition of the character. If he is the kind of in terms of stress, how he is.
Normally kicks off in combat, right?
Yeah. Then it mentions the weaknesses. The weaknesses are something like the flaws or disadvantages in other games. The difference in respect to, for example, World of Darkness games or even Cult is that you, in this case, you only have weaknesses, not merits, nor advantages. About the characters and character creations, there are classes. They are called stereotypes, but they aren't very relevant in this case. It's basically, well, it's the same. In this case, it's really the same as Cult. You have the archetypes, which are the equivalent to stereotypes in this case, and it basically suggests some skills and some things that you should have, but it basically that. But it's important to talk about it because you have just you can see the kind of
It gives a flavor of what you
yes.
can play in the game.
So you have the private investigator here, the detective reading this newspaper and probably drinking some whiskey. The obsessed, the government agent, the experiment, the city shark, paranormal investigator, profiler, disillusioned priest, book detective, demoralized soldier, reluctant ritualist, cat burglar, scornful psychic, horror writer, frantic reporter, and scrupulous
And
scientist.
we can see here that most of the stereotypes, they have something not very nice about them, right? The delusionist priest, the demoralized soldier.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the characters that we are playing are on the edge or almost on the edge. They are
The,
supposed to already have issues.
the unscrupulous scientist here
Yes.
illustrated is particular evident that he's not a nice guy. And is about to do something nasty to a woman who is naked. And you can see her nipples, which is something interesting. It probably wouldn't happen right now. So let's talk a little bit about the weaknesses. They are varied, and you get something like amnesia, bigot. Bigot's interesting. You probably wouldn't have that now. Defector and the dark presence, android acted, and the
Uh,
drunk.
I'm just thinking about the homicidal, the fanatic,
Okay, let's
the
go.
misanthropic,
Yeah.
they're all.
They are all misogynists now, so it wouldn't be a disadvantage to be something common. But there are some things here, for example, these ones, sexual deviant. You can play a sexual deviant, for example, like an exhibitionist, a necrophiliac, a zoophiliac. Well, you shouldn't play a zoophiliac, but
I wouldn't play with someone that wanted to be. I put my
yeah,
my stop there. No animals will get hurt
do
or
not harm,
abused,
do not harm the kittens, please. But you can play a
especially not the
sadist.
kittens.
You can play a sadist and harm people, which is always good. So you can see watching the weaknesses that they are nasty. So you can play a very tormented character with also a villain of sorts. In another game, it probably be a villain, but you can play it here as a character, which is an interesting thing. And it time to mention again Cult. Cult is a game that takes the darkness a long way, but Noctum just pushes it overboard. It's much better in that respect. You can not the villains only, but also the characters. I don't think even Cult would go there to the sexual deviants, for example.
Yes, but if you go to so this is a game that talks about the darkness, and the darkness inside of all of us.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I think it's mostly a game to play about the human evilness and secondarily other kind of evilness. So
I think it would be, for example, it could be a good setting to play Saint Claude, for example.
yeah,
Your game, because it deals with all the characters are more or less tormented, although
yes,
they seem normal.
the weaknesses here, for example, they would be very nice for Welcome to St. Cloud characters, and you could use them too for Giallos, for example. And I will, well, before the ending, I will suggest another thing that's probably even closer to the spirit of Noctum than my scenarios. Well, but let's go to other stuff now. So you have something that is almost like a merit or an advantage, but not quite, which are the trainings, but they build up on skills and give you an edge over those skills. So it's not quite the same as advantages. Something like doing booby traps or electronic surveillance, forgery, hacking. Well, they are the names, they could be the names of skills, but they aren't really skills. They are covered by skills. But these ones, if you have a training, you add something above a regular skill.
It's normal a special ability, right?
Yeah,
In
something
the
like
in
that.
the skill.
Yeah, something like that. Um, you have special rules for certain actions, like deciphering anagrams and ciphers, breaking and entering, crime scene investigation. These are interesting rules. Not every game has this, so you can. You notice that it is geared towards the kind of game that you could also play in Call of Cthulhu, the investigative type of game. But I think they do it better than Call of Cthulhu and other games like that. Of course, it's not for everyone. This is not not a particular narrative game. Not, it's probably inclined to that, but the rules don't necessarily show it.
I see it as the ideal game to play serial killers.
Yeah.
To play a thriller, and I see it especially with the cover and everything like a Nordic thriller. Those were very fashionable some years ago.
Which makes sense because the author also
Exactly.
wrote a Nordic thriller because he's Nordic. I'm not I can't remember the name of the book, but he wrote a real book, a book of a novel. Well, then there's something else to be mentioned about the rules, which is the rules for shock and horror or sanity. They are quite nice. The author had some, I'm not sure if it was friends or family members who worked with mental patients in mental institutions. So he did some research, and he was accompanied by people who knew were talking about. So the description of the sanity and the insanities are very detailed and interesting. So you have there are different rules for fear and the sanity. So there are a fear table and ways of gauging fear. You have focus to counter the effects of fear. So this is the usual the things you can be scared of, not necessarily mind breaking, not necessarily supernatural, but little things, or not little, but combat, for example. Then there's the rules for the broken mind, mentality and the psyche points. This is when you get really scared and shocked, and you might need hospitalization and psychoanalysis, and you will develop mental disorders. There are rules for all this, medication and disorders, description of disorders, fugue, hallucinations, multiple personality, repression. Well, it's
It's very
something,
detailed and
it's
it's
very detailed.
different. Yes. And you can see here the fight or flight that we have talked about, and it has some descriptions on how you would look, physically. The pupils dilate. So it is, how can I say it? It almost looks like it's more scientific than a normal role play. That
Yeah.
is not making it up, that he actually did some research.
Yes, the not just the mental rules, also the rules about investigation, and
Exactly.
there are also chapters on well, a chapter on crime scenes and how do you say, well, crime scene investigation,
Forensics.
yeah, forensics, and how does a corpse look like, and the kinds of injuries and all that. It's interesting, and it's well, you obviously can research that yourself, but you have already a chapter on that, so it helps you to organize things. Now let's go to the origins of darkness. This is the chapter about the occult part of the game.
You want me to talk about that, or?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the interesting part about the most interesting part about Noctum, it doesn't really have a mythology. It has a mythology, but you can play and ignore it. But it says that there is some darkness in the world, but the origin is unknown. So mankind does evil things, so we are evil, and it leaves for the game master to choose if the evilness is creating the darkness or the darkness is creating the evilness.
And then it is reflected in something that is called the coil.
The coil, exactly.
The coil is the origin of whatever it comes from the dark, the supernatural creatures, whether they are human created or not, or they are really
They
supernatural.
all come from the coil, yes. What it leaves to be chosen is what created the coil. Did it always existed, or did we create, or were us humans that created it?
Then, no matter what you are choosing, you have something called the harbingers, which are representations of sins. Asmodai is lust, Baal-zebub is gluttony, and Mastema is wrath, and Shamazai is pride, Mammon is greed, Belphegor is sloth, and Leviathan is envy.
Yeah,
So,
I see a little bit of parallel with cult
and
there,
also Mutant
though it's not the
Chronicles.
same. And exactly, and also Mutant Chronicles. Also, it's not the same.
The
And
name Shamazai sounds a bit like one of the creatures in Mutant Chronicles. So okay, that's it. These are the big ones.
the
The
big evil guys,
yeah.
yes, the super villains or the super evil entities. You can have it in your game or not. You can totally ignore it, especially if you want to just play a thriller. You can also play a slasher movie. You can go into the, how can I say, the slasher and gore horror. It doesn't have to be, this
There's
is
also a chapter on that.
about that,
Yeah,
right?
the types of game. I will cover that
Okay,
in a bit. So okay,
because
so just to finish this part of the
the
coil.
coil,
Uh, there's a chapter called not a chapter. It's a small part of it. This is called the realms. The realms. If you like cult and have played cult, you probably would like to do something like Metropolis or something like that. The realms can allow you to play something like you do in places in cult like Metropolis and the Borderlands. You have places like hellholes, constructs, dens of war, death paths, sites of sickness, gates of grief, nethers of nightmares, domains of time, shadow paths. So this plays with war and sickness uh,
grief,
and grief and the places where these things these problems arise. So mental institutions and war locations and prisons and all that.
yes, normally the opening to the realms are near, right, a cemetery or a battlefield or a mental institution. It's normally associated to
Or a
death, fear,
hospital or something like
disease.
that.
Exactly.
So that's it. This is the supernatural part, which, as we have mentioned before, you can ignore. Of course, there's
Uh,
a
Actually, the game, I'm remembering that it allows you, or it suggests you to create your own mythology or to use another mythology and just adapt it to the game. But that's something that's throughout the game. There's always a call out and say you can make it your own. Okay, if you don't like these stereotypes, you can invent another ones.
so
Most times we do it, right? That's what everybody does.
there's a list of minions, which are the minor creatures, not in the near the end of the book. So next we have the world of shadows. This is the part where you find connection between the occult and the human evilness. So there are a series of organizations and agencies. Um,
Some of them are real,
some of them,
some of them
yes.
not, of course. In the game, it gives also the idea that there is something wrong with the world. Yes, there is a darkness, there is an evilness. And these institutions, most of them know what is going on, but they are trying to hide it. So most of them are on it some way or another.
Yeah, this is the myth part of it. You have the real human small evilness, the criminals and the killers, and then you have these are large organizations, but they are made up of humans mostly. And then there's the supernatural, so you can use all these ideas. Then you have another chapter on relics and glyphs, which would be the magical items, but they aren't quite
Yeah,
magical
there aren't that many.
and they are dark.
And that chapter, the affliction, is basically just about being possessed, right?
Yeah, yes,
So you have a
there
whole
are
chapter
rules,
about possession.
spirits and demonic possessions, and
Yes,
they-
and
and
exorcism.
and also exorcisms and curses. Next, what I said, the minions. So these are the creatures there's a long list of creatures.
You can try to show some of the drawings are nice. Let me try to see here. The ones that are one page, the flash dolls.
So you have carvers, and this is a carver. This is similar to Leatherface, maybe, although is much uglier than Leatherface. And chainers
Oh,
are.
trainers are normally on appear on sex clubs.
This is more like a Cenobite, and it has nipples too, and
Yes,
a big
mouse
mouth.
on the belly.
And well, some of the creatures have strange names. I don't really like that, but the others, for example, I
Yeah,
like
like
flesh
the flesh
dolls.
dolls. Yes, they are the people that did too many plastic surgery and they're obsessed about their appearance.
These some of the illustrations are nice, some are not that nice. But okay, so well, this is a child.
That's Forsaken. That is the child that were victim of abuse from the parents or pedophiles.
Then you have some characteristics for human and animals that can be used for foes or well, allies. And then there's a rule for gifted. These are people who have psychic powers. Um,
The usual ones: clairvoyance,
Clairvoyance, that is
kinetics.
precognition, psychometry, pyrokinesis. This isn't I mean, this isn't very developed. It's not supposed to be played. Um, well, I mean, it can be played, but it's not the base
This
of
is
the
not
game.
supposed to be exactly a game about psionics. Or if you have powers, you're not supposed to be very gifted, and probably they will give you they will cause you problems.
But if you really want to play them, you can.
Yes, you can spin it and
You can, if you really want to add something to this, you can. There's also rules for magic. You can play also a conjurer of sorts, not a magician, but a conjurer, and it works some
it is
in a
interesting
way.
because in the magical systems you have voodoo, Santeria, Wicca. So
Yeah,
you have things that really exist.
and then you have the arcane rituals. These ones are things that are related to the game's mythology. And then we have a chapter about storytelling. It's not bad. Usually, that's the thing that you don't really read because you know how to do it. But it has some interesting things to say about horror and how to spin a horror tale and how to play several kinds of horror in this game. Um, for example, you have what I told before, autopsy
Autopsy
reports.
reports, exactly. It helps you how to write one or how to create one. I know we want to give some examples, but first I just want to add that basically this is not a sheep cult knockoff. So I see this game as a generic horror game. And at the same time, it's more expensive than cult because it was built to play different types of horror.
In relation to styles of play, you have several suggestions here: Ancient Gate, Hack and Slash,
Exactly.
Legions of Hell, Morose Miroir, which means a ominous alternate dimensions, Paranormal, which is a X-Files kind of game, a thriller, which is, well, serial killers, urban fantasy, if you want to use the gifted and the magicians, or, well, the conjurers. You can play a dark urban fantasy game. Wicked Cities, when you use the organizations and the political corruption, and you can give it a spin of the supernatural or not. And Hunters of Evil, like that TV series that never ends, Supernatural.
Yes.
Time traveling, I'm not sure who wants to play this, but well, who knows? You want to play
There's
something.
always someone.
Yeah. So, okay, and then you have, this is interesting examples of what you do, something you can use as a handout, corner's office. What's it called? A
It's a
report.
template or a report. Yes, a template for the report.
Okay. So this is the cover of, not the cover, this is the back cover of Vivisection, the other game with the source book we mentioned.
I love the title and I love the cover. I love the fact that it's called Vivisection, but that's me. I'm a sadist.
Well, okay, we can stop sharing now. So this is the interior and what we have to say about rules and setting. Um, would you like to add something more?
I think I already said what I wanted to say. I think we can show the examples because already basically that's for me this is the ideal game to play a psychological horror with a thriller with the evil psychopath like Seven or Hannibal Lecter, something like that. I would choose this game.
Or some recent TV shows like
Yes,
Mindhunters, right? And
exactly.
well, there are more. There are several. I wouldn't say CSI, but you can probably see a CSI also.
Or even X-Files, although
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
game for that.
yeah. Well, not really. There's
Not
not an official one, but there was a. I can't remember the name, but there was a game to play X-Files.
there's probably lot of games to play
Yeah,
X-Files, but yes,
several.
you can play it with a thriller and then put it a little spin of the supernatural.
I'm going to recommend, besides my own stuff, now I'm going to do not a self-promotion, but the promotion of something else. There's a series of 4 books, I think, by a Polish company called LM Publishing. I think they're all by the same author, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. One of them, at least, is by someone called ZZich. This is a nickname, I think. So they are called Case Files: The Serial Killers, and you can find them on Drive-Thru role-playing game. Casanova, Family, Firestarter, and The Feeder. These are very interesting. They are very well made, and they have the same preoccupation with detail and the kind of thing that you can play on Noctum by ignoring all the supernatural things you have here. And that's something I probably do because I don't really like the supernatural and the mythology in Noctum. It's not awful, but it's not really good also. So if you want to play something supernatural, I recommend something else, probably Cult, and we'll be speaking about that in another review. If you want to play something more mundane, this is the game to use, definitely. Don't use nothing else.
And
And
the case files are really interesting, yes,
yeah,
because I also checked them. They are really complete, and they gave, because building a thriller, this type of investigative campaign, it's really hard. You have to think about all the details and build a story and have the clues, and you have that done. On those case files, you'll have that done for you.
And US, of course, have the source book Vivisection, which is for this game. So it has several plot hooks, and those are interesting. Some of those, most of them actually.
I think we played some small campaign just
Yes,
based in
we did.
one plot hook.
Yeah, they are very intensive. You pick what, it's just a couple of pages, and you can go with that and play several game sessions. So it's nice and it's inexpensive. So it's a good value for your money. Okay, I think we have covered everything about this, and we're going to finish this review.
Okay, thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe the channel if you like, and if you think we suck, please feel free to say that in the comments.
Yeah, say. We don't mind. Okay, see you next time.
See you
Take
next.
care.